Rashad Davids and Jane Venkat will once again be free men. The pair, who turned state witness in the murder case of Brett Goldin and Richard Bloom in 2006, have served 7 years of their 12-year sentences. A representative for the victims' families says the decision to grant them parole followed much deliberation by the board. The victims' families say they hope the pair will be fully rehabilitated and show remorse for their crimes.
Welcome to or welcome back to our channel, and thank you for joining me here again today. So as you can see, things are a little bit different. We have a different background, and I'm also sitting in a different place, so I feel a bit out of my element today. But I wanted to try something new, so just bear with me, and if it's a whole fail, I apologize in advance. I mean, what I do like about our new setting is that I can see my plants a whole lot better, which makes me a lot happier. As you can see, my avos are growing in the back there. Not sure if you can see that, but they are, believe me. But that is obviously not why we are here. We are here for crime, and I do apologize for my green thumb popping in. So last week we spoke about the Adlington family murders, and if you haven't seen that, I will link it up here for you. But today we are going to talk about another story which was subscriber suggested. So thank you very much for your suggestions, and please keep them coming. And also, before we do get in the story, I do want to apologize for any construction noise that you can hear in the background. It is very, very noisy in my area today, and I don't know what's in the water, but everyone seems to be making noise. But with that all being said, let's get into today's case.
Intended for mature audiences only.
Brett Goldin was born on the 21st of October 1977 in South Africa. His dad's name was Peter and his mom's name is Denise. Brett had one sibling, and that is his sister Samantha. With Brett's family and friend dynamic, he was in a very loving relationship with all of his friends and his family. There was a lot of love there, and he was constantly surrounded by love and support, and that was the basis and the foundation of his childhood. Brett was also said to be very charismatic, very energetic, and a very positive person, and had a very good outlook on life. Brett had a very good schooling, and he first went to King David School, and then Brett went to Crawford College. Then once he left school, he then moved to Cape Town and went to the University of Cape Town. When Brett was at UCT, he studied a Bachelor of Arts specializing in drama and English. And when Brett was done and got his Bachelor of Arts degree, he then got a diploma in speech and drama. So clearly acting and performing and drama was Brett's passion. And that is exactly what he did from the young age of 11. He would act professionally, and he also starred in a lot of films and a lot of theater roles. And the limelight didn't just stop when Brett was a child. He was in a lot of TV commercials, and he was a regular on a series called Charlie Jade, as well as a film that he starred in 2003 called Citizen's Verdict. And some of his more popular work, or the work that he really enjoyed, was where he acted alongside his friends, Trevor, Brendan, and Gavin. And this type of role that he acted with his friends was more of a comedy skit kind of thing. And this comedy skit would come on between music videos on MTV.
Hi, I'm Gavin. I'm the tough one.
Hi, I'm Brett. I'm the wild one.
Hi, I'm Brendan. I'm the brainy one.
Hi, I'm Trevor.
Hi, I'm Brett Goldin, and this is Jumping on the Bed, even though my stepdad is downstairs.
Yeah, higher. Higher than Spencer for higher. Yeah, come on.
We better go, guys.
I heard it. I think that's enough.
Brett Goldin also acted in bigger films, such as Slash in 2002 and Straight Outta Benoni in 2005. While Brett was acting in these comedy skits, these films, and taking part in a lot of theatre roles, he was also busy writing his own theatre play, which happened in 2004 and was called Bad Apple. Later on in the year of 2004 was when Bad Apple, the theatre that Brett was writing, was actually put into production, and its opening night was at a small theatre on UCT campus. And the local media absolutely loved this play. They thought it was very well written, very well prepared for, and the play was quite successful. Then Brett Goldin's career just started skyrocketing, and Brett was proud. He was doing something that he really loved, and I think someone who finds a passion and is able to study their passion and then able to actually do what they love, I think that is so amazing, because I think a lot of people struggle with that. So luckily Brett had his passion, he studied his passion, and now he was living his passion. And while Brett's career was absolutely skyrocketing, Brett was also cast in a South African version of Hamlet, which was going to be staged in a massive theatre in London. And he was so proud of this, because he was now going to be living in London for months and maybe years performing this play. So things were absolutely great for Brett Goldin, and this is what he was looking forward to, and his friends were looking forward to for him. Richard Bloom, who was one of Brett's absolute best friends, was also very proud of Brett at the time, and both Brett and Richard were becoming very successful men in their own right. Brett was a successful performer going off to London, performing in these massive theatres, and Richard Bloom was a successful fashion designer who was now going to start his own line of fashion wear. So before I get ahead of myself, who, you may ask, is Richard Bloom? Well, let's give a little bit of backstory about Richard. So Richard, like I said, is one of Brett's absolute best friends, and he is a 27-year-old man from Cape Town. He's a fashion designer, and he works as a label manager at a fashion brand called Maze, based in Cape Town. Richard Bloom was in a long-term relationship with a clinical psychologist who worked for the city of Cape Town, and Richard's boyfriend mostly focused in the correctional services within the city. Richard was described by people as completely optimistic. He saw only the best in people, and he only saw positivity. Richard was so happy with life. He was always looking forward to anything, and he would always see the bright side no matter what. Richard was also very enthusiastic and very well liked between his peers, his workmates, and also just his friends. So like I said, Richard worked for a company named Maze in Cape Town, and the manager at this massive store was a man named Craig. And Craig and Richard were very good friends as well. So now that we have a little bit of a backstory, let's fast forward to 2006. It is now Easter weekend in 2006, and Craig, which remember is Richard's boss, invited Richard and his boyfriend over for an Easter dinner. Craig also invited a lot of other friends because he was having two friends who came from England over that night as well. So he just wanted to make sure that everyone was there to celebrate his friends coming down from England and also just to celebrate Easter weekend. Unfortunately, Richard's boyfriend was just not feeling the night. He didn't really want to go out for supper. He just wanted to spend the night at home. So Richard then asked Craig if he could invite Brett over for dinner. Craig was like, yeah, of course you can bring them. The more the merrier, let's just have some fun. So Brett agrees to Richard's invitation, and they then head off to a place called Camps Bay, which is absolutely beautiful suburb of Cape Town. So now we go back to the party. Everyone is drinking, everyone is happy, everyone is just eating a whole lot of good food, and everyone is talking about their jobs, their life, and just being really merry and joyful. So everything is nice and life is sweet. But then around midnight, after everyone had had a joyful time, Brett and Richard decide to kind of call it a night. They've been out for a long time. They now just want to head home. So they tell Craig they're going to head home. It's now almost midnight. They give their hugs and kisses goodbye to everyone. And Craig then walks the two to the front door and he says their goodbye to Richard and Brett. Now let's just pause. So have your thought that Richard and Brett are about to leave this house in Camps Bay. And I want you to stay paused on them for a second. Now we're going to move away from Brett and Richard and we're going to go to another party that's happening in the city of Cape Town. In the city of Cape Town, there were a couple of friends celebrating their friend's birthday. So on the way to the celebration in Cape Town, 4 friends leave their homes respectively in Crawford where they all stayed. They then head to a bottle store, they pick up a lot of alcohol, and they then head to this club in Cape Town. The 4 friends that I'm talking about is Clinton Davids, Siobhan Marley, Jade Veinhart, and Ushad Davids. 2 of the men were in their 20s, and 2 of them were 18 and 19 years old. So they were very young. So the 4 of them, like I said, were in this club in Cape Town. They were partying, they were drinking, and they were also using illegal drugs called tick. So the 4 of them are now over this party and they then leave the party just before midnight and they start driving away from the city of Cape Town. And the actions that these 4 men decided to take on that night would change the lives of so many people. So the next morning is the 16th of April and it's a Sunday of 2006. Brett's mother, remember her name was Denise, she had a plan to meet Brett that morning for brunch. They were going to go over some papers regarding the whole London transfer for the theatre. So they really wanted to talk about that and get that sorted. So Denise is busy waiting for Brett and she doesn't hear from him, she doesn't see him, and time now starts ticking away. It wasn't very usual for Brett to be late. He would at least try and phone his mom to let her know where he is or something like that. But it's almost now lunchtime, it's almost 12 o'clock, and Brett still hasn't arrived to see his mom. And as the time started ticking away, Denise said that she felt this absolute distraught and she had a gut feeling that something was very, very wrong. Denise started feeling very sick, and while she was busy at the Winchester Hotel waiting for Brett, a couple of kilometers away, Richard's boyfriend was just waking up and he was now looking for Richard, and Richard still hadn't come home. He hadn't texted him or anything. Then while Richard's boyfriend is panicking, he's trying to get hold of Richard, he's searching the house, he's looking everywhere for him, he's trying to maybe think where Richard could have gone to sleep, maybe he was too drunk, but no one where Richard's boyfriend thought that Richard would have slept had seen him that night. Then while Richard's boyfriend was looking for him, he got a call from Richard's bank that there is potential suspicious activity on Richard's card. So now Richard's boyfriend knew that there was something wrong, and he then called Denise to ask if Brett came home that night, and she said no. So Denise and Richard's boyfriend then decided that they were going to head over to Camps Bay police station to then file an official missing report for Brett and Richard. Later that day at Camps Bay police station, there were over 100 people of Brett and Richard's friends there to support and to try and look for him and to try and run a search party of themselves. The friends and family of Richard and Brett had spent roughly 30 hours looking for Brett and Richard. Then sadly, on Monday morning, Brett and Richard had been found, but not in the way that their friends and families would have liked. Both Brett and Richard had been shot execution style. They were both naked except for their socks that were on their feet. And when the media reported on this and it was then shown to the entire Cape Town peninsula of what had happened to Brett and Richard, people were outraged, people were angry, and people wanted justice for these two young men who were simply out on a night out with their friends and they didn't come home. So South Africa was now on the hunt for the people who had executed Brett and Richard. And in the most weird, bizarre twist of fate, that same night that the four men had left the club in Cape Town, they were arrested. And the reason that these four men had been arrested was because they were driving around the mountain's edge of Camps Bay and there was a man in front of them. And this man who was driving in front of them noticed that these four men were following him. And the man got very uncomfortable. And luckily that night, there was a police breath testing and police stop where they were testing for drunk drivers. So this man now got to this police roadblock. He then flagged the police down. He said, listen, there's these guys following me. Please, can you just check them out? So the police then pulled over this car of the four men and checked them out. They're like flashing their lights in their eyes and they can see that they are no way sober. So in the car, they pull out Clinton Davids and Siobhan Marley. They then take Siobhan and Clinton into the back of the police car just for protocol to keep them safe and the police safe. Then the police have a look inside Clinton's car that he was busy driving and they found a credit card with the name of B. Goldin on. They also found 1,040 rand in the car, as well as 2 bullets. The men were then taken to Camps Bay police station, where they had mandatory stay overnight because of their drunk driving. And if we just take a second to talk about one of the men who was in the car, Clinton Davids, everyone who surrounded themselves with Clinton said that he was incredibly intimidating. He was very aggressive, very aggro, and always just had to be the biggest and strongest man within the group. They were also scared of Clinton because apparently his brother was one of the top guys in a Cape Town gang called the Americans. So people just didn't really want to associate or mess with Clinton Davids. So when police did their investigation, Clinton and Siobhan were now in the jail cell. They had to stay in there just to sober up a little bit. And police were obviously going to charge them with drink driving. But when the police got the credit card, the money, and the bullets out of the actual vehicle that Clinton was driving, they put it in an evidence bag and they were taking this to the evidence locker. And as they were taking it to the evidence locker, the detectives who were investigating Brett and Richard's murder happened to kind of intercept this police officer. And for some reason, they got into a discussion and they kind of were talking about what he found in his bag. And the detective noticed that it said B. Goldin on it. And alarm bells were going off in his head. And he was like, where did you get this credit card from? And the police officer was like, oh, we found it on these guys who were found for drink driving. And the detective was like, I need to speak to them now. So the detectives then go, they start interrogating Clinton and Siobhan. And the detective said that when he took Clinton and Siobhan into this interrogation room, the two of them were still completely high. And during the interrogation, Siobhan actually ended up snapping. And he then told the detectives everything, where they could find Brett and Richard's bodies, as well as what happened that night. Siobhan said that himself, Jade, Clinton, and Nushad had all left the club from in Cape Town. They were high, drunk, and looking for trouble. Their decision was that they now wanted to try and find a car that they could steal. So they decided to leave Cape Town. They then headed through Camps Bay. So as the four of these men were driving around the suburb of Camps Bay, they happened to be in the exact spot where Brett and Richard were leaving this house. They drove past. Clinton then said to the four men, those are the people that we're going to rob. Let's turn this car around and let's go rob those two men. Jade then handed Clinton a 9mm pistol. Clinton and Siobhan got out of the car and headed towards Brett and Richard. Brett and Richard gave them everything that they had, and they took Richard's car keys, which was for a Volkswagen Polo, and that's the car that they wanted. For some reason, they decided to take the men, and they then shoved Brett and Richard into the BMW that the four men were driving initially. So in the BMW with Brett and Richard was Jade and Siobhan, and then in the Polo that was Richard's car was Clinton and Nushan. So the two cars then drove up all the way from Camps Bay to the cable car area just below Table Mountain. The four men then parked in the car park, and they forced Richard and Brett to get undressed, all while having this gun pointed at them and being shouted at by four men. The four of them then decided that they were going to leave Brett and Richard where they found them and just take the car, because they actually found Brett's car keys on him when Brett was taking all of his clothes off. So they now decided, okay, cool, they've got another car. So Clinton then decided that he's going to send Jade and Nushan back down to Camps Bay to get Brett's car. But while this whole altercation was going on, deciding who's going to go down to get Brett's car, Jade accidentally fired the pistol and it went off. Clinton got really, really pissed off, and instead of leaving Brett and Richard there and then just taking the cars, Clinton then decided, I'm going to take my rage out on these two guys. And Clinton and Siobhan then forced both Richard and Brett to get into the boot of this Polo. They drove away from Table Mountain while Jade and Nushan drove to apparently get Brett's car. Clinton and Siobhan still didn't want to kill Richard and Brett, apparently. They decided then that they wanted to drop them off on the side of the highway where they could just then abandon them naked. But now as they were pulling over to try and drop them off, or release them for a better word, they got stuck in the mud, and this enraged Clinton even more. So he then unlocked the boot. He told Brett and Richard to get out of the car and then to start pushing this Polo to get them out of the mud. And there was no way that this Polo was going to budge out of this mud, and it was just making Clinton more and more angry. So Clinton then got out of the car and he told Brett and Richard to lie face down in the mud, and he told Siobhan, put the gun over them. If any of them makes a move or tries to run or makes any noise, you shoot them immediately. So Clinton gets back into the car. He's trying to fiddle with it, trying to make it work. It's not moving, and one of the boys end up making a noise or screaming. Siobhan then immediately shoots both of them in the back of the head, and Brett and Richard then die instantly. So now, clearly Siobhan and Clint had a problem. They had bodies which were lying in the mud, and their car was stuck, and they were literally on the side of a freeway, which anybody could see them. So Siobhan then calls his two friends, Zubair David and Yassid Hussein, and he then called his friends to try and tell them to come and help them move this Volkswagen Polo. Yassid Hussein absolutely refused to go and help them move this Polo with bodies lying right next to it, but Zubair was not so against the idea, and he then asked Yassid if he could then just drop him at Nusad's house. So they dropped at Nusad's house, and Zubair then gets a shovel, rope, and he asked Nusad if he could take the BMW that the guys were driving around in earlier, so that he could then drive to Clinton and Siobhan. So Zubair then gets into the car with the shovel and the rope, and he then heads out, and he finally gets to Clinton and Siobhan, and he then takes this rope, ties it to the Polo, and he then tries to move it out of the mud, but the rope is not strong enough, it breaks, and now they're really stuck. So Clinton then comes up with the idea that they need to cut the seat belts of the Polo and tie them together and then try and pull the car out, which they did successfully do. They then made sure that their seat belts were tied really, really tightly, because now they were going to tow Clinton in the Polo all the way back to Nishad's house. So once they got back to the house, all of them started to party again. They started drinking, they started taking more drugs, and things were just escalating, and they had been now on this drug binge for a couple of days already. So Clinton and Siobhan then got into a Toyota Taz, which they were then driving around Camps Bay in, and that's where they eventually started tailgating this man, who then alerted them to police, and that's how they all got caught and were all put in jail. So all of the men who were involved were taken to court, and it was actually Samanda's idea to give them a plea deal. And the reason why she wanted to rather give all of these men plea deals or plea bargains is because she didn't want to have to sit and listen to every single detail of what happened that night again, and to put her entire family through this again. Samantha just wanted this done and dusted. So many people were hurt by this entire crime that she didn't want to relive what they had done to her brother and how he had died. Before, Denise, Brett's mom, was not keen on this idea. She wanted the harshest punishment possible, but eventually Samantha persuaded her mom to think about sitting through that trial and listening to how these men murdered her son again. So eventually Denise agreed, and they started to put a plea bargain together for these men. So the plea bargain in this case, and definitely in most cases in South Africa, are very much tailored to the victims' families, because plea bargains need to be approved by the people who are offering them. So the prosecution in this case made sure that the plea bargain was as harsh as it could be, but would still allow them to not go to trial and spend months and months reliving everything. So the judge did hand down the sentencing, and this is what happened. Jade Vanguard and Nushar Davids got 15 years in prison, 3 of which were suspended. Zubair Davids and Yasid Hussain were given 2 years in prison on the condition that they give evidence in the case. Clinton and Siobhan were given 9 counts against their names, 2 for murder, 2 counts of kidnapping, 2 counts of robbery with aggravating circumstances, 2 counts of possession of illegal firearms, and 1 count relating to having a dangerous weapon. Clinton Davids and Siobhan Marley were sentenced to 28 years in prison, and they were eligible for parole in 2020. Nothing has come of their parole yet. As far as I know, they are still in prison. But sadly, these men choosing to do what they did ruined so many people's lives. Brett's father passed away, and some say it was from a heart attack, and a lot of people say it was from a broken heart, because he did pass away quite soon after Brett was murdered. Richard's mom also passed away from cancer. And yes, the family of the victims did suffer quite immensely, but also the families of the murderers. In one article that I read, Siobhan's parents and grandparents visited him in jail, and it was said that his grandparents were absolutely distraught and heartbroken seeing their grandson in prison. So before we end, I do just want to give a note that our ex-president, Jacob Zuma, amended the law that certain criminals, and I'm not sure what makes them eligible to be able to get early release or parole, but basically Jacob Zuma amended the law to say that once criminals had served half of their sentence, only certain criminals, then they could be eligible for parole or for release. And then in 2014, Nushar Davids and Jade Vanguard were paroled and released on house arrest. And the future will only be the telltale of whether Clinton and Siobhan will be released as well. And in this case of Brett Goldin and Richard Bloom, it is one horrible way of wrong place and wrong time. And it makes you kind of think how many things must have gone right in order for Brett and Richard to be coming down the stairs, going towards their cars, when the 4 of these men were driving past at the exact same time. It just blows my mind how many things must have linked up perfectly to make this interaction happen. But that's all from me. Thank you again for all your kind support, your messages, and your suggestions. I really do appreciate them. That is the case of Brett Goldin and Richard Bloom. Let me know what you think down below. Please stay safe out there. Don't talk to strangers, and I'll see you again next week. Bye.